G'day, my name's Steve Morgan from Fishing Monthly magazines in Queensland, Australia, and I've got one of the new 4.6 litre 4-stroke Mercury V8 motors. It's the 200 ProXS. I've done 100 hours on it, so I feel entitled now to give you a review on what I think about the motor. Now, right up front, I'm going to disclose that I bought this motor. This isn't a free motor, it isn't a review motor. I paid cold hard cash like everyone else, and I've owned lots of different brands of motors over the years. Johnson, Evinrude, Yamaha and Tohatsu. So, I think it's going to be as independent as it gets. And I've got another disclosure as well. I did travel to Florida in the USA and to the Gold Coast in Queensland for the launch of both the V6 and V8 model Mercuries. That was at Mercury's expense, but the motor, I had to buy it. So, what's it on? Well, it's on a Bass Cat boat. It's on one of the new Pantera Classics, which is a 19'6" fiberglass bass boat built in the USA. We use it for tournament fishing here in Australia, some camera boat duties, and for catching everything from barramundi to bass. And when I fitted up the boat, I ordered not just the motor, but I ordered the digital throttle and shift system as well, and a digital hot foot. And we're going to talk about that a little later on. I also ordered from Mercury one of the CAN bus to NEMA converters, which means that all of the engine data I can run on my Lowrance HDS12 sounder. And as I said, I've just had the first 100-hour service. One of the things that Mercury advertises about these motors is that they have no valve train servicing for the life of the motor. So my first service in Australia cost me $680, which is around $400 to $450 US. Theoretically, that shouldn't change throughout the life of the motor. And because I bought this motor in 2018, it comes with Mercury's 6-year warranty, which means that if I get it serviced by a local Mercury dealer and they use all the proper Mercury products in it, it extends it from 3 years to 6 years, which gives me peace of mind for my hard-earned cash. Now, one of the things about this Bass Cat boat is it doesn't have a real big fuel tank in it. It's around 30 gallons or 106 litres in metric. And I like to try and get a full tournament out of a tank of gas. So for me, economy is one of the big things about this motor. When I'm running in a tournament, there's a couple of speeds I can run at. I can idle around where the economy's good and it doesn't really matter anyway because that doesn't use much petrol. There's around that 60 to 80 kilometre an hour mark where the economy sits on around 1.4 to 1.5 kilometres per litre burned. The good thing about this boat though is at my travelling speed in a tournament, and this thing goes to around 115 kilometres an hour when I'm running flat out, but sitting on that nice cruising speed between 80 and 100 kilometres an hour, the boat gets right up on its smallest piece of pad and the economy actually goes up to 2 kilometres per litre burn, which gives me over 200 kilometres of range and enough to get through most tournaments that I fish in Australia. Now firstly, let's go through the things that I really like about this motor. The first is the weight. This thing in the catalogue comes in at 229 kilos. That's exactly the same weight as the old Optimax 2-stroke motor that it replaces. And with the power to weight curves on these motors, there's absolutely no reason anymore to buy a 2-stroke motor. And the next thing, I think Mercury was really clever in doing it. Any Mercury rigging you have in your boat from your old ProXS motor, anything that runs Smartcraft is going to fit onto this motor. You don't have to go and spend the big money on the digital throttle and shift. You can use your old cable fit out and it's going to plug straight into one of these things. Now, one of the things you may remember about older 4-stroke motors or smaller capacity 4-stroke motors is that they're a little bit slow out of the hole and that the motors are really heavy. Now, I think that Mercury wouldn't have released this platform if they couldn't get the weight the same and the performance better. One of the first things that I really noticed about this motor when we got into it at the initial launch was that mid-range torque and that low-end grunt that you have. Now, Mercury do this with capacity. It's a 4.6 litre motor, and when you put your foot down, this thing really jumps out of the hole. And when you're sitting on cruising speeds and put your foot down, it pushes you back into the seat. So the actual performance of this 4-stroke motor is superb, and it's been like that ever since day one to hour 100. Now, one of the things you will notice if you come from a different brand of motor, say an Evinrude, is that these things don't start on the first touch of the key. My old E-Tex would start as soon as I hit the key, but these things, they turn over 3 or 4 times and then they kick over. It's a constant, you need to get used to it, but that's what happens. And with 100 hours on this motor, it's had its share of hard work. In fact, in the first hour of operation, I managed to knock the corner off the cavitation plate with an underwater log. That's been welded. And also there's been a recall on this motor since I got it. I got a letter in the mail from Mercury saying there was a part on the inside, one of the senders, that needed to be replaced. Never gave me any drama and it was fully covered under warranty. Now you might be thinking, should I upgrade from my current platform, because the Optimax ProXS and the L4 Verado platforms, both of which this motor replaces, are both pretty good platforms. I've had an L4 150 horsepower supercharged 1.7 litre Verado and it was pretty cool. It had great high-end speed, its low end wasn't that good, and it was a little bit weighty. It weighed nearly the same as this motor here. And before that, I came out of a 225 horsepower Optimax ProXS. Well, I can tell you that once you've run a 4-stroke, you don't have to add oil and the performance is better. It's nearly not a choice, and it explains why Mercury have deleted both of those motors from their range. Now, one of the initial problems that I had was that my old H-style Mercury supports didn't fit this boat. There aren't holes in the right places to hold it, and I've been using those supports for the last 10 years. But I found these. These are a Yamaha. They're a sleeve which fits over the trim support. They do a great job on this V8, and I don't mind crossing the brands. But that's enough of me talking about the Mercury. Let's get it on the water and let me take you for a ride. So one of the things I really love about the digital throttle and shift on this V8 Mercury is the fact that I can switch between my digital hot foot and my hand throttle, and I can do it by throwing it into neutral and I hit that hand throttle button, and then this becomes a hand throttle that I can set to go 4 kilometers an hour, 4 knots, 6 knots, whatever the local speed is. If I'm fishing in a tournament, I can control it, I can not go over it, and I can be free of that hot foot, and I can do things in the boat. I can make sure I do everything right and do it the right way. And to swap it back, just pop it back into neutral, hit that button, bang it into gear, and my hot foot's active again. So when these new Mercuries came out, a lot of people didn't like the look of them. Well, several months on now, and there's not too many people that don't think that this is a good looking engine. And they sound great. Listen to this. That turns heads at the ramp. Now, unlike old 4-strokes, this thing has no problems getting a big bass boat out of the water. But it's in this mid-range, when you put your foot down, that's when you really feel the difference. Now, the economy at this cruising speed, we're going about 70 kilometres an hour, isn't that flash, around 1.5 kilometres per litre. But when I trim it up further and get most of this boat out of the water, it gets real good. There you go, we're sitting on about 1.8, 1.9 at the moment. Sitting on 90 kilometres an hour and getting 2 kilometres per litre. And with a 106 litre fuel tank, that's handy. Well, there you go. Thanks for coming for a ride with me out in the water on my Mercury 200 horsepower ProXS V8. Love 3 things about this motor. First is the weight. At 229 kilos, it's the same weight as the old platform, and I run lithium batteries in the back of this thing, so getting into that shallow water is pretty important. Love the weight. Secondly, love that low to mid-range torque that this 4-stroke generates. There's no replacement for displacement, and that 4.6 litre block pushes this boat up and out on the water really quickly. Thirdly, I really love the economy of this motor, and it's at a high speed, so that 80 to 100 kilometres an hour, I get 2 kilometres per litre burned. And finally, of course, I love the 6-year Mercury warranty. So I hope that's a decent, honest review of this motor that I've now had for 100 hours.